Welcome back to the 12th episode of Real College Reviews. This is a fun one, another remote episode today, and I'll let Uma take it away. Uma, just introduce yourself a little bit for the audience.
Yeah, my name is Uma. I'm a or not a sophomore, I'm a rising junior at UMass Amherst. I'm studying psychology, and UMass has a pretty cool program where you get to make your own major. So I'm creating my own major in behavioral economics and added an IT minor recently.
Awesome, yeah, and I've heard that about UMass before about creating your own major, so I definitely want to jump into that later in the episode. But just starting out, how'd you choose UMass? What were some of the other schools in your final consideration? And I guess what did UMass bring to the table that stood out?
Yeah, so I would say the two schools that I was between were UMass and then UC San Diego. I just loved California. I really wanted to
Yeah.
get out there, but UMass was honestly just the best bang for your buck. I wanted to go into just pre-med when I first started thinking of college,
Hmm.
and UMass had a great research program, and it was significantly cheaper than UC San Diego, and I was closer to home, and I would still be far enough to have that independence.
Right.
So looking at schools, I was like, okay, UMass is significantly cheaper. I get all the research experience that I want. I'm closer to home, so this is great. And a little fun fact, I am a tour guide on campus, and I like to tell people on tour that when you like write UMass out, it's UMA, and that's my name. So I kind of was like, okay, that's like the universe just telling me that I should go to
You got to
UMass.
go there.
So,
Yeah. I didn't even think about
and we
that.
have great food too.
Yeah. Oh, that I've been on campus before, and again, when we get to the dining halls, I'm sure we'll have a lot of good things to say because it's funny. College dining halls, it's either people say they're all right or people say they're awful. UMass, it really is incredible food. So I'm sure we'll talk more about that later on. But I know you're talking about and UC San Diego, completely different on the different coast, different weather, whatever. But were there any specific draws besides your program and the cost that UMass had over San Diego?
Yeah, it was also just the location, honestly. Growing up in New Jersey, I feel like I was really close to the city, even though I was living in a suburb. And
Right.
I like the fact that UMass was kind of in Western Mass. Really weird because I never would have thought I would want to be in the middle of nowhere farmland.
Yeah.
But it's kind of got that cute small town, college town vibe, which I didn't expect to like, but I really liked it because it gets you that independence, but it also it's just a cute town. I loved how the seasons are with the fall and the spring because you
Yeah.
get to see that a lot more in Mass than you do in Jersey. So the location was definitely great, and just the fact that UMass had so many options for everything. I'm really indecisive, and going into college, I know I wanted a school that would force me to become more confident in my decisions and
Hmm.
decisive. So UMass having the program to create your own major, a gazillion study abroad options, I knew that if there was anywhere where I was going to constantly meet someone doing something cool and inspire myself to do the same, then it would be UMass.
Yeah. Again, I think that's a great tidbit as well. And we'll talk study abroad as well. I didn't even know that UMass because some of the big state schools I know Rutgers for the Florence program, it's like 20 or 30 spots for the entire 40,000 undergrad population. So I
Oh,
think with a
wow.
lot of the state schools, sometimes it's hard to study abroad. With UMass, do they make it? I don't want to say easy, but more accessible compared to some of the other big schools.
Yeah, super easy. Unless you're a nursing major where you have to study abroad a certain semester, or
Right.
you're just a difficult major that you can't really pick when you go.
Yeah.
For the most part, literally anyone can go abroad. You can go to another country or study at a state school, or like we're part of a five college consortium, so you can study at Amherst College, for instance, and take two classes there. So super duper easy. There's offices dedicated to each respective program.
Yeah, that's awesome. And the five college consortium too. I remember that from when I toured UMass. It's UMass obviously, Amherst College, and then what are the other three? And then just give me the kind of a quick rundown on how that works and what the benefits of it are.
Yeah, so it's UMass Amherst, you got those right, Mount Holyoke, Smith, and Hampshire. And how it works is you're allowed to take up to two classes or 8 credits every single semester, I
Okay.
believe, after your freshman fall. And we have our regular platform where you just sign up for classes. I believe it's just a different section on that platform, or you just go to the Five College Consortium website and can look up classes there. I'm not sure how the registration works, but
Right.
you basically can browse the classes on the same platform where you would pick classes, to my understanding. And then you would either email admissions or the person in charge of classes at those other schools, and they can sign you up for those classes, space permitting. So the
That's
main
awesome.
benefit, I would say, is either getting to take fun classes, or the second benefit is just getting to take a class that you might not be able to take at UMass since it already filled
Yeah.
up. So for taking a fun class, I know there's these I think there's a mountain biking class or a singing class at one of the other colleges. So it's a great way, especially if you're really someone who likes to be active and you don't get the chance to do that in
Yeah.
your free time. Just do it for a class. You get credit for it. It's phenomenal. And on that second point of just taking classes that may fill up at UMass, I have a friend who ended up taking an abnormal psych class, I think, at was it Holyoke? One of the other colleges,
Okay.
because they just liked the professor better and they liked Mount Holyoke and wanted to check it out. So it's great to have the
Interesting.
experience to go to a smaller liberal arts school. And it's also nice because it's a two-way street. Like it's not just UMass students taking advantage of the smaller
They
schools.
come
It's
to you as
also,
well?
yeah, and it's really nice because you never really know if you're talking to like an Amherst College kid or just like a UMass kid. So it's
Yeah.
really just a college environment, which is great.
Yeah, that's amazing. Have you tried it out for yourself, or have you just taken UMass Amherst classes so far?
I've unfortunately only taken UMass Amherst classes so far, but
Okay.
I definitely want to take a creative writing class at Amherst at some point if I can.
Yeah, I've heard those are fantastic as well. But looking more towards UMass Amherst campus specifically, the transition to high school, rather college from high school, your freshman year. Some people say it's challenging. Some people say it's easy. How is that for you in terms of coursework? Going from your senior year of high school to your freshman year of college.
Yeah, I think it was not as bad as I would have expected. Part of that can be attributed to high school, and part of that can be attributed to UMass. So,
Hmm.
with high school, just taking the AP classes, you knew how much work you were going to expect, you can expect with some
Yeah,
classes. So, with
for
the
sure.
reading and synthesizing information, that was not bad. And for UMass, I was part of something called a RAP, so a residential academic program, and it was a 3 credit class, an introductory class to kinesiology or something like that.
Okay.
And the professor would talk about kinesiology, obviously, since that was a point of class, but a part of that curriculum was also just adjusting to college. So, different study habits, how to make sure
Wow.
you're
Okay.
having a balanced life. So, it was really nice. I know not all RAPs are like that at UMass, but my professor really took that extra step to just make us get used to college. So, I can definitely attribute my transition to be a lot easier because of that class.
Yeah, that's amazing, and that perfectly segues into my next kind of question here, and that the professors at UMass, and again, I'll go back to the point of big state schools where you really almost get a mixed bag at schools with 20, 30,000 undergrads. At UMass, is it the same thing, or have most of your professors been pretty good, pretty accessible, easy to understand is sometimes an issue as well?
Yeah, I honestly would say most of my professors have always been accessible. I've never had an issue getting in contact with a professor. If they are really busy, they usually have a graduate TA who's also super knowledgeable and super accessible. And if you have a question that they can answer, like you'll get a direct connect to the professor. That's what my experience has been
Okay.
so far. In terms of like understanding and stuff, I've also had pretty good luck in that department. I know some people who haven't, but I
Yeah.
think it's really, like you said, it's a mixed bag. Like it just depends on how you kind of learn best. And with the psych department, thankfully, it's all been relatively straightforward.
Yeah, and have your classes, I guess as a sophomore, you're probably taking some more, major minded classes. Were they big lecture halls or were they, smaller high school sized classes?
Yeah, I would say most of them were larger lecture halls, and it's because everyone in the psych major has to take the class. I think psych is the
Yeah.
biggest major at UMass,
Oh,
so if
wow.
everyone has to take intro psych, then you're going to have a lecture hall of about 300 people, give or take, because it's not only psych majors taking that class, it's people who need a social science requirement or something like that. So most of my psych classes have been pretty large, but as you get more specialized within your major, for instance, I took an organizational psychology class and
Okay.
that class was about 50 people or 40 people.
Oh, so it's
So,
smaller. Yeah.
yeah, and if you take a seminar, there's even less. There's probably like 20 or less. And if you're in the honors college, same deal, like 20 or less.
Right.
So, most of mine have been large, but you definitely have the option to customize it if you're interested in the smaller high school classes or take it at the other 4 schools.
Yeah, yeah, and the I already forget the name of what it's called taking classes at the other schools, but again, that's definitely just a huge perk that most other state schools I don't think have. And I just looked it up as well. Niche says that psychology is the most popular major at UMass Amherst by about 100 students. So that's a pretty big gap because
Nice.
second and third is about 40. So yeah, you were absolutely spot on with it. Well, I guess you're a tour guide, so it makes sense that you know your facts about UMass Amherst. But moving more towards the students at UMass, people that you see, walking around campus or in class, what are the characteristics of a typical UMass Amherst student? And I know it kind of might be hard to generalize because it's such a big school, but if there's a few things that most UMass students, have or possess.
Think just being back on campus, it probably depends on what area of campus you're in. To be honest, like if
Interesting.
you're in Southwest, that's like our little city on campus. It's a residential area. People are a lot more social, outgoing, like super fun there. I lived there freshman year and it was definitely a really fun time.
Okay.
Trying to think. Obviously, everyone has the typical student characteristics of like backpack, water bottle. I would
Yeah.
say most people on campus walk really slow. I don't know if that's just me, but I just like get so frustrated when people walk slow. So I'd say that's probably a common characteristic. A lot of people like do like skateboards or like e-scooters and stuff to class. I would say that's
Yeah.
pretty common too. I wish I could do that, but unfortunately I'm stuck to walking. Trying to think. You can also like definitely tell where people are from by how they dress for the weather. Like if someone's born and raised in Mass their whole life, they obviously have a jacket, but they're not as bundled up as
Yeah.
someone from
It's not
like
like
the West
the
Coast.
Canada
I don't know if you
Goose.
experienced
Yeah.
that at Syracuse, but yeah, you can definitely tell where people are from. I think that's a common characteristic is people wear their, I guess, hometown on
Oh,
their shoulders,
definitely.
so to speak.
Yeah. No,
In
like you
terms
said
of,
at Syracuse, it's the same way where people are from, even south like Maryland or Virginia, they wear the big Canada Goose jackets. Then if you're from up
yeah,
north, like central New York or western Massachusetts, you throw on like a flannel and that's about it.
yep, that's pretty accurate for UMass. Everyone has such different styles, so I think the best way to categorize people is just by what they wear on top of what they would normally wear.
Interesting. That's a point that's really never been made on this show. So I appreciate you pointing that out because it's something I observed too, being a college student. But you looking at your experience through your first 2 years at UMass as a whole, yeah, as a student and as a person, do you think you fit into the campus pretty well?
Yeah, 100%. I was not expecting that going into it. I'm sure you and other people know that UMass has this reputation of being a party school and
Yeah.
ZooMass. And while I will say it's a super socially active campus, where that reputation came from does not is not like from how it is now. It's kind of from the earlier days of UMass. So super
Okay.
fun campus. But obviously just listening to what other people say about your school before you enter it, you're like, oh, like I don't know if I'm good for this. This might not be for me exactly. Just a bunch of
Yeah.
variations of that. Definitely felt that, but honestly, within the first 2 months, I was able to see why I fit in. I like that if you wanted to be super social, you can. If you wanted to just never leave your room, you can. It was so big a school that like people didn't really care what you did. Like you were the one that cared about yourself the most.
Yeah.
So definitely humbling, but yeah, I definitely fit in. I'm really appreciative of that.
Yeah, it is a humbling experience going from a small high school that we went to where everyone knows everyone and
Yup.
drama's always circling around to a big school where it's like, you might not even know your next door neighbor. But like you said, it's nice, but at the same time, it's humbling where it's like, oh, I'm the only one who kind of cares about what I do. But moving more
Yup.
towards the campus from an aesthetic point of view, you said it's pretty, and I think we'll touch on that a little bit more. But is there anything special that the campus has? Like, if I had, for whatever reason, 5 minutes on UMass's campus, what's one landmark or one area that I should go check out that I can't miss?
I'm trying to think. Okay, there's two, and I think it just depends on what you're interested in.
Okay.
Okay, maybe three. So the first I would say is the library.
The
I'm
big,
sure if you toured
tall
the Mass, you'd see
building.
it. Yup, tallest
Yeah.
red brick academic building in the world. It's super fun because there is history in it. So if you are looking to see W.E.B. Du Bois archive, just what the books look like, statues of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, baby falcons up top. Like there's just so much to do within the library. You can get a sense of student life within the library, I would say, or the student union. But the library is just a lot more fun because it
Yeah.
has that extra stat to it. The second place I would recommend you check out is probably the Eisenberg School of Management area, just because it's a newer building and it looks kind of fun, and it's right by our Fine Arts Center, so you kind of get the most bang for your buck there. You're right by a dining hall and the design building, so if you want an aesthetic kind of part of campus with newer buildings, I would say that Eisenberg area is where you're looking for.
Yeah, it looks
If you're
pretty.
just looking for the Western Mass vibe, I would say go to Orchard Hill. It's one of our residential areas. Absolutely amazing view for sunsets, super peaceful. There's fields and stuff kind of in the area. So those would be my top three. But I personally spend a lot of my time in Eisenberg, so I'd probably vote for O Hill or the library.
Yeah, yeah. I remember I just looked up some Orchard Hill pictures, and it jogged my memory. I when I toured, I went over there, and it's really pretty. You have all the old brick buildings that are dorm rooms, and yeah. So I think those are really three really cool landmarks. And I know you mentioned how it's so pretty in Western Mass, and I think when most people hear about Massachusetts, they kind of think about Boston and maybe the areas outside of it, and then that's it. In terms of Western Massachusetts things to do around campus, is it a lot, or are you kind of just kept on campus because it's such a small town and it's just farmlands?
I think a little bit of both. I think I definitely spend a lot of my time just hanging out in other people's dorms or just hanging out somewhere on campus, like a dining hall. Like
Right.
food really just follows you everywhere at UMass. If we were to go off campus, again, it is food. Like downtown Amherst has a pretty great food scene, a lot of good boba places, Asian restaurants, and it's just nice to kind of walk up and down. Honestly, that's a
Hmm.
pretty good walk. The other two things I would say are Hadley and Northampton. So Hadley's where you have your Target, your TJ Maxx. So any money that you have left over as a college student, like
It's
you would
going
probably
there.
spend it. Yeah, it would be in Hadley. And especially Trader Joe's. And
Yeah,
finally with
yeah.
Northampton, that's a really cool indie kind of town. There are a lot of shops, there are a lot of restaurants. I feel like I heard Noah Khan played there a couple years ago. I don't know if that's true, but
Really?
it's just a really nice local music scene. So if you're looking for something a bit more than downtown Amherst, I would say Northampton's probably your best bet. And those are the top three things to do. In terms of like, I guess like going out and stuff on campus, there's like two frats or some frats off campus, and there are bars in downtown Amherst and Northampton. I would say the downtown Amherst ones are probably the most popular, and there's three or four of them, I think.
Yeah, and not asking necessarily for your experience, but from what you've heard, if you're under 21, can you get into those bars, or are they pretty strict?
From what I've heard, I would say they're pretty strict.
Okay. Yeah, and that's pretty similar. A ton of college towns where it's like you kind of got to go looking for places that might necessarily be a little more lenient with that 21 age. But going back to campus more specifically, I know a ton of colleges, especially after the pandemic, they've just built up new buildings, built up walkways, green spaces, you name it. Has UMass, is there any area of campus that they're just building up, maybe giving a reface to, just constructing something new, or is it all kind of staying the same for right now?
Honestly, I think it's mostly staying the same. There are two areas that are being built up. One of them is by Eisenberg. They just finished building these new apartments. The apartments aren't, I don't think they're owned by UMass. It's like a separate company, but the apartments are on UMass campus. So that's
Interesting.
one thing that
Okay.
they just finished building up. Yeah, really nice apartments and obviously really convenient to be on campus, but technically be off campus.
Right, right.
And the second area or building, it's called Goodell Hall. It's one of our older buildings on campus, in the center of campus. Used to be the library, I'm pretty sure, and I think it was just old, so they're just redoing part of it and putting a bunch of student resources in that building to make it more centralized. So
Oh,
other
yeah.
than that, I don't know if there are major changes, but Goodell's going to take till 2025, I think. So
So yeah, our senior year when we're almost out of there, but it's how it always is. But looking more towards the dorm rooms, I know you said you spent a lot of the time just hanging out in dorm rooms, and I think that's a pretty common experience for most college students. But the physical dorm rooms at UMass, I know they might differ from upperclassmen dorm rooms to freshman dorm rooms, but how big is your dorm room as a freshman? And I guess are there any benefits like AC, or is it kind of just a run of the mill freshman dorm room that you got to just grind through?
Yeah, honestly, if you're in Massachusetts, you only really need AC your first 2 weeks of
Right,
the school year and
right.
last 2 weeks, but the Honors College dorms do have AC. You do have to be in the Honors College to live there, but
Are you in the
uh,
honors college? I should have asked that earlier on, but
yeah, I transferred in after my
okay.
freshman fall.
Oh, so
Yeah.
you can do that because I know some schools, if you're not in it, coming in as a freshman, you can't be in it at all. So UMass, you could transfer in.
Yup, I believe it's super competitive to get into out of high school, so they
Yeah.
let you transfer in if you have a 3.5 GPA and write a small short
Oh,
answer section or something. So
that's definitely very doable. Yeah.
yeah, so those dorms are the newest on campus and they do have AC, which is pretty nice. I lived
Okay.
in one my sophomore year. So basically, housing your freshman year, you pick from five different residential areas: Southwest, Northeast, Central, Honors, and O'Hill. And I lived in Southwest, so I can probably speak to that one the most. They have these cool rooms called Z rooms. So you walk in the dorm and your dorm is kind of literally shaped like a Z, except instead of that diagonal part in the middle of the Z, it's like a straight line. So you walk
Okay.
in, there's a bed against the wall and your desk and whatever else in your closet. You
Right.
take like three steps more and then the other person has the same thing. So you have a bit more privacy. Like
Yeah.
if I'm in my bed, my roommate wouldn't fully be able to see me and vice versa.
That's
So
nice. Yeah.
Yeah, that's only in Southwest though. Every other residential area has your typical freshman dorm room. The size of the room is probably the same as the other ones. It's just the layout of it was
Right.
different, which made it nicer. But yeah.
Yeah, no, those sound pretty cool. And the honors dorms, of course, are just super nice and almost like apartments. And you've kind of been through this already, but looking past your freshman year for housing options, do you have to live on campus as a sophomore? And if you don't, are there houses that you could rent in the town of Amherst? Are there just apartments that you could rent? I mean, how does that work looking for housing, as a sophomore, junior, senior?
Yeah, so freshmen just live in the dorms. Sophomores can, if they're in honors, they can live in like suite style living. There's also another residential area called Sylvan that has suites
Okay,
that freshmen can technically live in if they're transfers, but usually upperclassmen. And then juniors and seniors, there's apartments within honors, but also an apartment complex on campus.
interesting.
So in
Okay,
terms of like living on campus, I would say all freshmen are guaranteed housing and have to live on
right.
campus. Sophomores, it's about 75% of sophomores that stay on
Oh,
campus.
that's a lot.
Honestly,
Okay.
yeah, I think there's always a housing protest. I'm sure there's a good amount just throughout colleges in the
Yeah.
country, but I've never had like I didn't have any issues sophomore year getting housing. I feel like if you just stay on top of it, you should be okay, but I guess it really just depends. Sometimes you just don't get lucky,
Yeah.
but and 50% of juniors are on campus, and I'm assuming that number also includes RAs and stuff or peer mentors who also live in your
Yeah,
building,
probably.
and 25% of seniors live on campus. So there is a good amount of off-campus housing. Obviously, they just built that complex right
Hmm.
on campus.
Right.
There's a bunch of apartments, a bunch of houses. Some people may not live in Amherst, they'll live in Hadley or live some people like even like I know someone who's commuting from Springfield, which is
Oh,
about
wow.
30 to 40 minutes away. Yeah, that's not too common. I would say living in like Hadley or downtown Amherst are probably the most common.
And how
To my
far?
understanding,
Yeah, how far are they away from campus?
yeah, downtown Amherst, you can low key walk depending on where you are.
Oh,
It could
okay.
be a 20-minute walk,
Oh,
but
that's
most
not
people
bad at
just
all.
drive. We have a free bus line if you want to use that as well. You obviously have to like plan your schedule around that, which is kind of annoying.
Yeah.
But Hadley's also the same, like, I don't know, 10 to 15 minutes. I feel like my sense of direction and time is really bad. But yeah, I would say it's all pretty accessible either with the car. If you're off campus, I think it's easier to have a car than rely on the bus exclusively,
Definitely.
but
Yeah.
it's pretty accessible. A lot of people do it. And again, if you're on top of your stuff, you have to get a house like a year before you live in it. So I'm living in an apartment this fall and I basically signed the lease last October, November. So you
Yeah.
do have to be on top of it. But I feel like that's pretty typical. So
Yeah, it's like that at every single school. Some schools are even earlier. I know students who, for their junior year, they sign leases at the end of their freshman year, and it's like you don't even know
oh,
if you're
that's
gonna be,
crazy.
you know, if you're gonna be friends with these people. I mean, you can't predict anything that's gonna happen in the next year and a half.
Yeah.
But so yeah, October, November. While it's still really early for like the real world, for in terms of college, that's I don't want to say late, but that definitely gives you some more time to figure out who you want to live with and where you want to live, which is nice. But looking back at your freshman year, and I know sometimes I get some funny answers with this one, or just some really crazy stuff. But freshman year roommate stories, maybe not your own roommate necessarily, but just stuff you heard at UMass. I mean, is there anything that sticks out to you about the dorms or a certain roommate or just any sort of living at UMass your freshman year?
Yeah, I feel like some people just really need to be honest about the surveys that they fill out when you're picking a random roommate. I was honest with my survey. I feel like because of that, the roommate I was matched with, like we lived fine together.
Hmm.
But I know some people who weren't super honest. Like I know this one person was with this roommate who always had the TV on and was just a yapper, honestly, just would not stop talking. So she would just like always complain about that. And obviously, like you feel bad, but you're
Yeah,
also like, okay, like I need to go to bed now. Like, come
right.
on. But that's honestly the worst one I've heard. I feel like most of my friends either pick their roommate because UMass is a state school, so a lot of people are from Mass and
Right.
know the people that they're going to school with. So
Yeah.
I know some people who've picked the person that they roomed with, and then they were just like, okay, like maybe I should have gone random and just met someone else. I feel like
Yeah.
I'm kind of pigeonholed, or oh, like we are great friends, but we cannot ever live together. But
Right.
unfortunately, nothing too juicy. I would say it's honestly just people who yap or just don't have a sense of cleaning their room.
Right. Yeah, that's definitely on the better side of stuff I've heard. I've heard some absolute horror stories just from roommates or just living on the same hall as someone, but Yeah, definitely being a yapper is not the worst I've heard at all. Though it is still annoying for sure.
I mean, there were these two guys above. So the floor that I lived on my freshman year, or the building I lived in, it was like single sex floor. So like above us was all
Right.
guys.
Okay.
There were these guys above us, and I swear they were moving their furniture every single night. There is no other explanation for what the hell they could have been doing. So that for me, like I would just take my Swiffer and literally just hit the ceiling because I was like, okay, it's like 3 a.m.
That's
now. Your
funny.
furniture can wait till
Yeah,
tomorrow.
yeah.
But it was either that, a basketball. They would drop stuff and like curse at the stuff they dropped so much too. But
And you
I
call
never got to put a face to the name. But
wow.
yeah.
Well, that's probably a good thing too that you just, it's almost like that villain that you don't even know. Cuz I mean that would piss me off too if I heard that in the middle of the night. But I
Yup.
I want to talk about the dining halls now, which I'm sure you're more than excited to talk about, especially as a tour guide.
Yes.
I mean, just the first thing I'm going to ask is, why are they so good and why are they so well known for being so good compared to all these other schools? I mean, what's so special about UMass dining?
We're genuinely just that good. In terms of how we're known, I think it's weird because I've talked to UMass alum who went to school at UMass years and years ago, and they were
Okay.
like, "Oh, like we weren't that good back then." So I think it is a recent thing. I'm not I guess for what makes us good, our food is like there's a lot of variety. We're sustainable and we do fun stuff. So with the variety, you can find Asian food, you can find like Mexican food, you can just find your classic American food or
Yeah.
Italian food, which is always nice to have options. There's also really good accommodations for dietary restrictions, to my understanding. Like there's a separate section for gluten free, there's always a
Okay.
vegetarian option. So I think that's probably a good draw is that they make it accessible. I don't know anyone with extreme dietary restrictions, so I can't really speak to their experience, but I
Right.
feel like the general dietary restrictions, if you have a peanut allergy, there's always cards saying what's in everything. So
Okay.
I
Yeah.
think that's pretty good. With sustainability, obviously Western Mass is farmland, so we do get a lot of our produce and stuff locally
That's
sourced,
cool.
whether it's from a student farm or just a local neighboring farm. So I think that's just nice. My dad always swears the vegetables taste fresher there. I don't know how true that is, but it's just like a nice thing to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
And we do a lot of fun stuff with food. Like for Canada Day, we had this big ice sculpture in front of one of our dining halls. We do
Wow. That's cool.
cook-offs, like surf and turf, so steak and lobster for Halloween. Just a lot of fun traditions that make food enjoyable. And the food's just everywhere. There's like a food truck on campus, there's a dining hall or cafe everywhere. So
Yeah.
because it's kind of always in your face, you kind of like I genuinely think the food's that good, but maybe people who don't think the food is that good are just like, okay, it's everywhere. Like I gotta love it. I don't
Yeah.
know, but the food's amazing.
Like you said before, the food follows you around, and from what you're saying, it definitely sounds like it's true, and it definitely sounds like it's not a bad thing from what you're
No,
telling
not
me
at
and
all.
from what I've heard about UMass as well. But looking at the meal plans, as a freshman, I know a ton of schools have mandatory unlimited meal plans. Is that the same at UMass? And then, as an upperclassman, do you have to have a meal plan, or are you just free to, find your own food from a grocery store and cook it yourself?
Yeah, so you're right about freshman year. We do unlimited 500. That's the typical one.
Okay.
So, or unlimited 250. I forget which one it is, but the number is your dining dollars. So if you go to the Starbucks on campus, you can pay with the dining dollars
Right.
instead of a credit card. So that's required. Moving on sophomore year, I believe as long as you're on campus, you are required a meal plan. I don't know if that's true, but if you are truly off campus or you just don't want a meal plan, there are other options. Like you can do not unlimited, but do a certain amount of swipes, like 500 swipes or something like that.
Okay.
You can also do something called YCMP. So each swipe of that is $12. So again, if you want to go to Starbucks or our campus food court that isn't really the dining hall, you
Hmm.
can get an entree there that's about 10 to $12. It's
Okay.
annoying because it doesn't fully line up. Like you'll still have money left over or you'll have $13 for your food and you're
Right.
like, okay, I
Right.
just used one YCMP. But yeah, I would say that's pretty much the meal plan scene. So people are allowed to do what they want. Just stayed on unlimited when I was on campus just because sometimes I literally wanted to walk in and just grab a drink or grab
Yeah.
a cookie.
Yep.
But moving off campus, I think I'm going to do either YCMP or just load dining dollars onto my card and just use that. That way I don't have that weird leftover
Right.
situation.
Yeah, and also it's if you're off campus, there's just no need to spend all that money on the unlimited plan when you're gonna be at home and or your apartment or wherever, and
Hmm.
if you have to walk all the way back to campus. But I know you mentioned downtown Amherst having a cool place to walk around and having some cool food spots. Is that the main place people go to eat food completely off campus, or are there some other spots that are popular among students if they don't want to go to the dining halls or a food truck, actually on UMass's campus?
I would say the most popular place I can think of is downtown Amherst, just because that's so close. If you're
Okay.
going for maybe if you're going on like a Saturday or something, like we have more time, then I know people who go to Northampton. Like I definitely do that. If it's a nicer dinner, I'll go to Northampton.
Okay.
But if you also just want like Hadley has your Target and stuff, but it also has Chipotle and Taco Bell. So if you want fast food, I would
Right.
say Hadley or downtown Amherst are the two go-tos, and Northampton's reserved for if you have more time in the day, unless you have a car.
Gotcha. Yeah, yeah. If you have a car, I mean, anywhere is fair game. But I
Yeah.
want to ask too. You talked about before designing your own major. I I don't even know where to where to really start with that, just because it's such a unique thing that UMass and maybe a few other schools have. I guess just explain to me how that works and how you go about making your own major and picking classes and whatever else that entails.
Yeah, so the program is officially called BDIC, so Bachelor's Degree in an Individual Conversation or
Okay.
with an individual, one of those two. And how it works is you can't just rework an existing major. So if you want to major in biology, but you're like, oh, I don't want to take this bio class, you can't just rework that. It has
Right.
to be a
Right.
unique major.
Okay.
So you have to take classes from at least four different departments, if I'm not mistaken, and you
Oh
need to
wow.
have a total of either 12 classes or 36 credits.
Okay.
So when you first apply to the program, it's recommended that you apply after your freshman year. That way, you've taken all of your general education classes. You actually know what
Right.
different majors are at UMass, and you're not just rushing into it.
Right.
So
Yeah.
when you apply, you basically say the major that you would want to create, what you would do with that in terms of personally, professionally, and
Okay.
maybe general classes or departments you would take from. So for my major, I just said I wanted to create a major of behavioral economics. I think I called it neuroeconomics to sound fancier at the time, but I was like, I want to go into management consulting and I really want a better understanding of business and psychology
Yeah.
brought together. So I wanted classes from the School of Management to the business school, the econ department, sociology, psychology, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
And then you write like a little essay thing. And as long as you have a valid claim, so you aren't trying to rework a major and you
Mhm.
are having a general idea of what you want to take classes in, then they'll
Okay.
usually like pretty much everyone gets accepted into the program if you kind of fit those criteria and you're in good academic
Okay, that's
standing.
cool.
So after that, you take a proposal writing class. It's a 2 credit class, pass fail, and you basically work on a proposal for your major. So the BDSE program stores every single major that was ever created. So if you're looking to major in behavioral economics, like you can just go onto the BDIC website and see what classes I took, and
Interesting.
you'll
That's
be able to
cool.
have that guideline.
Yeah.
Yeah, really helpful. I was able to find people who did behavioral economics majors as well, and I was able to kind of fit my interests along with theirs and see where
Right.
we kind of overlapped. So pretty cool. And in the proposal writing class, you work on picking general classes, and those classes can change just generally looking at the course catalog right now. What would you want to take, and when might you want to take it? And just really exploring what you want to do with the major. I feel like the proposal writing class, I didn't know that was a part of it, but it really made you reflect on why you're actually giving yourself
Right.
this extra work of creating a whole major instead of just choosing one that was already there.
Yeah.
But it was fun.
Yeah, it sounds like, just such a I keep using the word unique, but I think that's the perfect way to describe that whole program, 'cause at other schools, you could, maybe find like a minor that's very uncommon, but you can't go out and fully create your own major, create your own path. So I just find that so cool, and especially like pairing it with something, it could just add so many benefits when applying for a job, or just like what you want to do, understanding the industry that you want to go into. But looking more outside the classroom, is there anything fun that you do? I mean, I assume there's things that you do for fun, but stuff that you do for fun and outside of class. Are there any clubs or societies that you're a part of? And are there things that are just super popular for UMass students overall that they do outside of class?
Yeah, so in terms of what I do off or outside of the classroom, I'm a tour guide, which is fun because I
Right.
get paid and I love talking, so it's
Yeah.
double win. I'm also part of the Asberg Undergraduate Consulting Group, so we're a student-run strategy consulting group, and we get to work with actual clients, whether that's startups, Fortune 500 companies, or nonprofits. So it's
Okay.
really great because you get a whole community of people who love what you're interested in and are also interested in their own thing, so
Hmm.
great friends, but you also get professional experience. So that's kind of the best of both worlds, and I've loved being a part of that. I'm also part of the Student Alumni Association, so it connects students to alumni. We do a lot of fun
Okay.
campus-wide events. So those are probably my top 3 involvements out of the classroom. And in terms of like what UMass students do for fun and something I do for fun too, some of it is just walking around, like going to the rec center sometimes. Our
Yeah.
recreation center is pretty nice. We do a lot of fun classes. I did a ballet class my freshman year, never doing it again because I sucked at it. But just knowing that that option was there was pretty fun. And we
Yeah.
do like there's like yoga for the bros, like broga, and
That's cool.
Pilates, like self-defense. So literally any kind of class, anything you're interested in trying, you can do that with UMass Rec Center. So that's
Yeah.
pretty cool. That's something a lot of students do for fun. It's just honestly going to the gym and staying active,
Right.
which is really nice. And since we are like a larger campus, like there's a lot of just open fields. So when the weather's nice out, doing picnics on Orchard Hill or even just on the fields for people play like soccer and stuff.
Yeah.
Another pretty popular pastime. Like you will see everyone with a blanket and a book or their laptop out when the weather's nice. Like you will not find a green spot on campus because it's just covered with people. So it's always really wholesome to see. When the weather's cold out, I feel like you're obviously not seeing people kind of lazing around as much. Mostly
Right.
people
Right.
are inside, but yeah, I think that's mostly people do. There are a lot of clubs on campus, so most students are involved in some club, whether or not they're like on e-board or just a general
Hmm.
member. Sports are also huge. I know a lot of people do intramural sports,
Yeah.
so where they just make the teams with their friends. That's pretty popular, and I think we have some fun sports with that too. So I would say the staying active is pretty common for an indoor activity, and then the outdoor activity is when the weather's nice out. Everyone's kind of chilling outside.
For sure, and I think too with staying active and most of your activities that you said were in some realm about staying active or staying outside. It just improves your mental health too so much as a college student. I know that's
Yeah.
something that I will have to work on a lot, and it just helps whether it's going to the gym and lifting some weights or going on a run or just sitting outside like you said on a nice day, getting that quintessential college experience with the blanket and the frisbee and whatnot. It just boosts your morale by so much. So I definitely think that it's a great way to not only stay active and improve your physical and mental health, but meet some people as well and spend some time with some friends. But
Yeah, and I mean, there also are so many creative people on campus. Like I know we have a great like music program. Like a lot of people are interested in arts and being part of the radio. So you will see people in the student union either advertising for their clubs or kind of showing off what they've been working
yeah,
on. So
that's
it's
cool.
nice that there's literally everything.
Yeah, that's awesome too, and that's another benefit that big schools have, over small schools. Small schools, you can obviously do a lot of things, but at these big schools, there's just so many people, with so many different ideas of what interests them that you can just find, really cool niches that you fit into. I know you mentioned this before, but the frat and sorority scene, or fraternity rather than sorority scene, because I got to be formal with the names, you know, are they? Is it big at UMass? Because I know, like you said, it has the nickname ZooMass, which I always find funny. But what's that scene like there? Are people involved in it? I mean, just like from what what is it like Greek life at UMass?
Honestly, I would say it's pretty small. So I think the official number is 8 or 10%. And you can
That
see
is
that
small,
as,
yeah.
oh, like a small percentage. Or you can say, oh, that's 8 to 10% of a school that has around 30,000 students. So there's
Right.
two ways of kind of looking at it. We like to call them small but mighty. Like people are definitely involved in them, but in no way, in it, like being part of Greek life in no way defines your social life at UMass. It's not like one of the larger Southern schools where everyone's part of it and it's a huge thing on campus
Right.
where you're all really bonding over that. At UMass, like I know people who are part of frats and sororities and they found like their best friends, a great community.
Yeah.
But I also know plenty of people who aren't part of it and still are able to have a great social scene. So it doesn't define your life. They're there. I think a lot of freshmen probably would go to the frats in general, maybe even sophomores,
Yeah.
but juniors and seniors usually bars or house parties in terms of like the active or social part of that. But beyond that, yeah, they're there. It really just depends on what you're interested in.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think that's definitely good that you don't have to be involved in one, but at the same time, like you said, they're there, and if you want to go down that route, you can.
Yeah.
And looking more towards campus-wide traditions as a whole, is there anything special that UMass does or UMass Amherst students do at a certain time of year, like a certain day? You know what I mean? Like some schools have traditions. Like I know at Harvard, I think it's like you walk up and touch some statue before a big test. Like does UMass have anything like that?
I'm trying to think. I can't think of it. Okay, I'm trying to think of something that isn't around food, but that's kind of hard to do. So I know homecoming is a pretty big one. There used to be a parade, but now they just do kind of like a kickoff tent. So that's
Okay.
pretty popular. That's either September or October. We have a pretty big marching band, so it's pretty common for them to be marching around campus kind of at the start
That's
of the
fun.
school year.
Yeah.
I like during freshman year when I was first moving in, I would get waken up in the morning by the marching band,
Oh
so that
God.
was not the most ideal. Like they sounded great. I just didn't really need
Right. You
that
didn't
as
want to
my
get up.
alarm.
Yeah.
I know that I don't know if this is still a tradition. There used to be like a tree planting thing, but most of our traditions really just revolve around food. Like for Founding Day, I think that's what it's called. They do a bunch of food, just like burgers,
Okay.
chicken, salads. That's pretty fun. Honestly, everything's
Yeah.
just around food, like tailgates around food, homecoming around food. So always wish we had some kind of superstition, but nothing that I know of, honestly. I
Y-
guess like Blarney, if you would count that, but that's kind of just a Western Mass school thing. So,
What is that? You said Blarney? What in the world is Blarney?
yeah, so it happens around St. Patrick's Day. I don't know if it's before or like during. I'm assuming it's before, but a bunch of students just go to the townhouses, and it's kind of just like a darty on the green,
Okay.
basically the green meaning like the green space between the townhouses. That's kind of a UMass tradition. If you would count that, I would say if you asked like someone about their UMass experience, Blarney might be thrown in there. But yeah, I would say it's pretty popular for UMass students, even students from like the other like four schools,
Yeah.
but basically just a giant darty, I would say, with yeah.
I was gonna say I just looked up pictures of it and it definitely looks wild. I mean that I can see where the
Yeah.
UMass name comes from. But looking, I think what a lot of times ties in with traditions on campus is sports. And I know UMass is Division 1, but it's not necessarily known for their sports. Besides hockey, I know they're really good at hockey. Do people go to the football, basketball games, or are they just not that popular?
I would say the football team, if you are looking for a school that has a really great football team and football presence, UMass may not be the school for you. The tailgates beforehand are really fun. A lot of people go, again, for the food, but also just to support the team in general and just have a good time. Not too many people end up going to the game, or if they go to the game, not too many people end up leaving the game. I would say probably the
Yeah,
homecoming game is the most packed just because of the sentiment
right.
behind it. Hockey, definitely super popular. I feel like we broke records for attendance this past season because
Oh
we honestly
wow,
did amazing. Yeah, we beat Michigan in one of the games, which is crazy.
that's cool. Yeah.
So I would say hockey is pretty popular, and basketball, both women's basketball and men's basketball are
Okay.
super duper popular. Besides that, for other sports, people will like go to watch if it's like a nice day and there's something to do, like soccer or something. People will
Yeah.
like go watch, but it's not super popular.
Okay.
Usually, you know someone on the team, or you're genuinely just bored and want something to try out.
Yeah, no, it's the same at a ton of schools where people go and watch their friends, or like you said, if it's a nice October day out, nice and
Yeah.
crisp in the fall, it's just perfect to just like you said, sit outside and watch a soccer game or field hockey if you're into that. I can't think of any sports that are outside for some reason in the fall right now, but cross country, I guess, if you want to watch that. But yeah, no, it's cool how at UMass sports are there, but at the same time, kind of like Greek life, it's not the center of campus that you got to be so into sports or you're not going to fit in.
Yeah, exactly. I would say hockey is probably the one that there's the most like peer pressure on just because everyone goes to it. And if
Yeah.
it's parents' weekend, forget it. You like are not going to get a ticket. Well, I guess students, you kind of just show up, but you're
Right.
not going to get the best seat ever. But yeah, it's definitely nice to have that. I think intramural is also just super popular on campus and even club sports. So it's nice that, like you said, it's there, but doesn't really define your life.
Right. And I know you mentioned this, a little bit earlier on in the show, but studying abroad, you know, do you plan on going, or do you know a bunch of students that are planning on going, and like how does that process work? And I know you mentioned a little bit of where you could go, but where are some popular options for where UMass students study abroad?
So glad you asked. I am going abroad next spring to
Okay.
the Czech Republic.
Oh wow.
It's pretty popular for students to go abroad in the spring, I would say, maybe just to avoid the winter of Western Mass. That's
Yeah.
partially my rationale, honestly. So there's a program office called the International Programs Office, and they can help you pick locations, figure out classes you can take, and cross check it with your academic advisor. So it's really easy to go abroad. You honestly just have to make an appointment, and it can be online too, so which
Yeah.
makes it even more
Oh
accessible.
yeah, that's
For
cool.
popular locations, I would say Italy is probably the most popular. Anywhere in Europe is really popular, but Italy
Yeah.
especially. I'm trying to think of where else. We do offer programs in every continent except Antarctica. I think the professor who used to do that program retired, so we don't do that
Oh, so
anymore.
there
But
there 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 actually used to be a program to Antarctica.
Yep, that's what
Oh,
we say on
wow.
tour, so I'm gonna assume that's true, yeah.
Yeah, that
But yeah, it's really nice. There's a lot of options, and you can do study abroad with classes, you can do an internship, research,
okay.
literally anything.
Yeah, that's cool to hear that it's just really accessible, and you could even go to Antarctica at some point. Maybe that'll come back in the future, but yeah, I don't know if I could spend 3 months on that icy continent. I mean, Syracuse and I'm sure Amherst in the winter get pretty close to what Antarctica feels like, but at the same time, oof, I don't even know. I don't even know what I do in Antarctica for 3 months at a time. But Uma, as we wrap up here, and I think we've talked about a lot of really important things, a lot of really cool things that students or prospective students rather would want to know about UMass. But if you could just describe UMass in one sentence. I know it might be hard because it's such a diverse school with different experiences. But if I was in an elevator with you, like a little elevator pitch, you had 15 seconds or 30 seconds to pitch me UMass and why I should come, what would you say?
Oof, that is so hard to do. Gosh, let me think about that for a second. I would say if you're looking for endless opportunity and just a really good time, then UMass is for you. You can do literally anything you've thought of doing and then some, plus have a really good time doing it with some really awesome people from all around.
Yeah, I think that perfectly sums up, what you've told me today, and what I've heard from other students as well and seen online. So, yeah, I think that's a perfect way to sum it up. But Uma, is there any advice that you have for students looking at UMass or going to UMass or just prospective college students in general?
I would say for UMass specifically, I think it's really important to be a self-starter because while UMass has a lot of opportunities and we do get sent them, for instance, we get a career newsletter every week and we get a campus happenings every week, it really is on you to go out and make that connection. So if you're someone who is not the biggest fan of not even going out of your comfort zone, but you're not always super good with just making decisions and
Yeah,
being self-starter, take initiative, then definitely think about if you see yourself doing that. Because if you see yourself doing that, then UMass is great. But if
right,
you kind of like a bit more structure, then UMass may not be for you because it really is like they're structured programs, like obviously pre-med engineering, super structured,
right,
but
right.
a lot of it is just you make your own path. So that's for UMass specifically. I think for college in general, it's so funny saying this because I used to hate when people told me this, but stuff does work out. So I think when you're applying to colleges,
Yeah,
like if they don't want you, like maybe there's also some subconscious reason that you wouldn't have worked for them. So I think just not taking anything personally and really knowing that you'll figure out where you're meant to be and you'll just know.
right. Yeah, I think I hated that too, and people would say that, but at the same time, like you said, if you make the most of your situation wherever you end up, it's gonna be a good time, and you're gonna make good memories, and you're gonna, get your degree, which at the end of the day is the goal. But Uma, again, like I said before, we talked about a lot of good things. I learned so much about UMass Amherst, and I think being a tour guide definitely helped because there were just so many facts and figures that you put out there that I even fact checked in the middle of the episode, and they were all true. But I just want to
Nice.
say, I just want to say thank you for your time and best of luck at your next 2 years at UMass.
Yeah, thank you too. Excited to hear this episode, but also the rest of them too.
Yeah, looking forward to it.